Hey, Jazz.
Hey Sue,
Hey,
what's up?
what's going on?
Girl, life just been lifing.
When does life not life?
I don't know
What does that feel like?
when I'm on the beach, like when I'm on the beach and I have like a cocktail in hand, like on vacation. That's when life just be like everything I need it to be. Nice
But that's
breeze.
still life.
I mean, it's not lifing at that point though.
Oh.
You say when it don't be lifing.
So yeah, in this a week's episode of our podcast, we discussed an issue that has been top of mind for a lot of voters. It's always on the news. There's always some really awful stories about pregnant individuals who have been put through some really horrific circumstances because of the overturning of Roe with the Dobbs decision, which we go into in enough detail in our episode 2. But we wanted to do this bonus episode. It's our first bonus episode. That's exciting. It's like,
Yeah, and we can kind of like sometimes we can just have a moment to like kind of do a little
yeah,
quick deep dive into something that that we had discussed and maybe give it a little more
context. Yeah.
conversation, or just even get a chance to like because we don't want to hold you guys there for 2 hours at a time because I mean although we are entertaining, I don't know if we that entertaining. Uh, but yeah, it just gives us the time to kind of just talk about things a little more in depth on like a one-off
Yeah.
type of vibe, which is always good because sometimes when we find like in conversations, we'll find like a thing and then we'll kind of veer off there for a moment and then have to circle back to where we started.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, this is something that we wanted to discuss on our episode 2, and we were just talking and talking. We didn't get to it, but I wanted to make space for you to share and for us to have a conversation about your experience with abortion. I think it's really important to give those who have had the actual experience the spotlight to share the stories that we hear on a daily basis. They might be a little bit different from what you went through or what you were experiencing at the time, but I think that your story will resonate with a lot more people who have had abortions or who have supported people who had abortions. Even though this is a bonus episode, we're still pouring up because these are heavy topics, and
Yeah,
it's like
nobody wants to be.
I
I
don't
mean,
know. Nobody comes over my house and is not offered a drink. Like I don't
I mean,
understand
we're
that. It's just the
hospitable people.
hospitality in me.
I mean, I'll offer
And
you something to eat as well.
exactly, Jasmine ate. I cook because apparently children need to eat. So yeah, if you don't want to cook all the time, don't have kids.
I mean,
Or if you can't afford a private chef, yeah.
or
So
if
we're
you
still
like your
pouring up.
waistline.
Would
That's
you
the
like
only
some
thing.
more of this bubbly rosé from a Cooper, the exclusive Cooper's Hawk
Sure. Some,
rosé? We went to Cooper's Hawk for my birthday dinner, and for some reason, I signed up for a monthly wine membership. I don't live within 30-mile radius of a Cooper's Hawk, so when I passed one this past weekend,
go figure.
I was like, oh, a Cooper's Hawk. Let me see if I can get some of the wine that I have accumulated over these wait, what? It was like my birthday was like 10 months ago. So, yeah. I get there it's like, "Oh yeah, you have 10 bottles available through your membership." So, I got 10 bottles and was like, "Please cancel this shit because obviously I
I
don't
mean,
need it." It's a
honestly,
really good deal. I would if
I
you
mean,
live within like I don't know, a
I
15
enjoyed my
minute
bottle.
drive of a Cooper's Hawk. And the food was good. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, went
I
for my
enjoyed my
birthday.
food.
This wine is good. This rosé, it's very nice. Let's start this conversation before I drink more.
I think honestly, growing up in this country, there's a lot of things that we're taught we shouldn't discuss, like politics, abortion, money, race,
Religion.
religion. There's just usually like a blanket of topics of things that we usually don't discuss, and abortion is one of them.
Yeah.
And I think without doing that, we really don't allow conversations to be had, or for people to really I mean, just it happens more commonly than most of us acknowledge. And I think it's
Absolutely.
because a long time there's a bit of taboo or stigma or shame or guilt or just the pretty much basic thing of it being something between you, a decision between you and your doctor. And you don't tell everybody about every other thing that happens at your doctor. So why would you tell them about these things? So I think that by not talking about it, sometimes it makes these things seem like very distant topics or things that kind of only affect some and not everyone. And to be honest, there's not many people in my life who either haven't been personally affected in some type of way, whether they are someone who's been through the journey or someone who's supporting or have been supportive or knows someone who has. So I think it's a conversation that we should just start to have more openly without the stigma or shame surrounding it. And I thought that, us having this conversation together might be a way that we can kind of do our little part to continue to acknowledge that
Yeah,
and make more
absolutely.
common for sure.
I agree 100% with everything, especially, the destigmatization. That is something that I think the abortion access movement is really working towards. They have the momentum of public support behind abortion, like the majority of Americans, as we discussed on the episode, support abortion being legalized in all or most cases. But what I think we still deal with, and even in our communities today, and even in some of our friend groups, is a stigma about abortion. Like you mentioned, religion. Religion is one thing that really shows up in that. It's like, oh, well, why do you do that? I thought you went to church. I thought you knew God. Especially in the Black community, that always comes to mind. But also, just like when you get older, it's like, well, why are you having abortion?
I think also like with having more conversations, which is when I'm hoping that this will, be part of the mechanism to kind of help grow that. I mean, one, often you'll hear people make like quick quips or comments about like, oh, and usually the onus is on the woman, even though women can't get themselves pregnant.
Right.
Is that, oh, they should have done this to protect it, or they should have done this to not end up in this situation. And it's almost like,
And still, in
yeah.
2024,
I
we're
mean,
still
and
dealing with that
yeah,
That's just
exactly.
misogyny.
But it makes no sense. One, they can't do
Yeah.
it alone.
Right.
Two,
Well, they
like
should have had on
it
something.
doesn't make sense
Did they
because
consent? Or like, were they
how are
were
you
they
dressed?
intoxicated? Well,
Or
you drank.
yeah,
Like,
I mean,
I
it's just
mean,
there's so many things, and honestly, like abortions from pregnancies that are unwanted are one thing, and that has a multitude of reasons why the pregnancy may be there and unwanted. But there's also
a
like
lot of
so
valid
many other
reasons.
reasons
Exactly.
outside of that why people either have to get an abortion or need to
Need it
get one.
in
Like,
order to
I mean, and
survive.
usually I think we do a disservice to the large group of women who are carrying a child or are looking forward to carrying a child or just
Yeah.
beginning out their journey
Yeah.
who either have miscarriages,
Right.
MDNCs are required in order for them to just, not die and or be
Yeah.
healthy in order to go back and if they want to try again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Or an
that
ectopic pregnancy, which will
exactly.
kill you and you won't get a chance to have a baby and the baby will never be in a viable place when that
Exactly.
happens.
Right.
You know,
And the earlier that it is removed from your body, the better chance
you
you
have.
have.
You know what I
And
mean? Or even just people who have sometimes there are people who literally have like medical conditions
yeah,
where it's
that
like
will not
they
allow them to that I mean that's what
or
happened
that
with
carrying
with
will
Candy Miller. Like her story, I think she had, was it lupus?
would have almost killed her to carry that baby.
Exactly. And her decision to get an abortion was, pretty finite. Like, no, I have three children already. And no, I'm not willing to risk my own life
Yeah.
to bring another child into the world. And on top of that, I don't trust the medical system that exists in my state. Like, she had a lot of medical distrust, with which a lot of Black people have.
And also, if you have lupus, which is an autoimmune disease, stress also causes flare ups.
And she
So,
was,
being
yeah,
stressed like that, along with having something else feeding off of your body that is also stressing you, and then not knowing what's happening around you, like that, I'm sure did not
right.
help.
So, Jazz, tell us about your experience with abortion. The floor is yours.
So honestly, I guess in terms of my personal abortion story, like I guess I'm lucky enough that it wasn't really a taboo topic growing up. I was able to kind of have those conversations even before I went off to college. I remember my grandmother, who was born in 1920, told me about how she used birth control, which was condoms at the time, to not have kids for 8 years in between her first and second child. No matter how Christian she was and religious she was like, yes, we got married, we had a child, and then we used condoms for 8 years, and then we decided until we decided to have another one. So, like I was lucky enough to even be able to have like some of those kind of clips of conversations where things weren't really as taboo in my household as they were in some others. So even when I was curious about being sexually active, like I worked for AIDS prevention service in like 10th grade and taught other people about STDs and safe sex. So when it was time for me to really decide what I wanted to do, I actually took myself to Planned Parenthood and got myself birth control. I had caught the metro one day after school and took myself. And then told my mother about it later. And she was like, okay, well, I'm glad you're being responsible for things you were thinking about doing or would like to do. And so even at that point, that was probably like the first discussions really about abortion and, her being there to support me if that was something I need to do and, making sure that I, give myself a chance at life and not really get stuck with some of the trappings that maybe having a kid at a younger age, especially like in high school, may have the effect to do. So
So your
I,
mom, even before the situation presented itself, like
oh yeah,
you knew that that was an option,
I knew that
because
if
some,
I ever wanted to go, that my mom would support me. As a matter of
yeah,
fact, my mom told me like if you get pregnant, like before you leave high school, I will go with you and take you to get one because I want you to have a chance at life. It
yeah,
wasn't like about punishing me or being ashamed of me, which I think also is a big difference because it allowed,
right.
like, my mom always was the one to have like upfront conversations with me. So I think that was a big thing of like allowing me to just feel more comfortable. I was never shamed for like asking questions, doing research. Like my mom was actually a person who put me in contact with a friend of hers to get me a job at like 15 to do AIDS prevention service work. And even my
And that
dad,
support system, like, or
yeah,
and that wisdom that your mom shared with you, not just about the fact that you know these are things that you should be actively,
yeah. I mean, my mom's just very like
engaged in, but like,
open.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
appreciate that. I
And I
mean,
think,
sometimes
yeah,
too open. Like sometimes too open.
no,
Honestly,
she's
when I got my menstrual cycle at 10, she made me call my father, all of my
right.
grandparents,
See, no,
and tell them on the phone. But I remember my dad like getting on the phone and like having a conversation with me and just being like, you can talk to me about anything, be careful, while you're out here, because people get VD. And I had to, and if it wasn't for the fact that I had done AIDS prevention service work, I
no,
would not have known what VD was
I
because
only
they
know what
don't
BD was
refer to it as that
because no,
anymore.
they don't, and I only know that episode of Good Times where they thought
Yeah.
that that girl gave JJ VD and
Yeah,
it
my dad
wasn't
was like,
him.
he was like, just be careful
He was
because
like, "You got VD."
they got VD out here. He was like, but even though like, most of it you can like get a pill or a shot in the butt for you, but be careful. But my dad is also a very down to earth and wonderful gentleman, so I love him for all his realness.
Yes,
But
but
I
that
mean,
was, yeah.
again, this also
That's a
opens the
bit,
thing
yeah,
because like my dad is also a modest guy. Like he's a modest man, but also just a modern man.
yeah.
So, with all of that, after I graduated from high school, I went off to college. I taken out student loans and gotten grants and even all the public loans and all the grants and tuition assistance that came with just being from this area just did not amount to what it cost me to get there. So I had to take out private loans, and I did that. And I also had family that like helped me out here and there, friends and family, just to make sure that I could do well, to go to school and just try to be great. I mean, my dad literally got his GED while in the army. So for him, he was super proud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my mom didn't get a chance to graduate from college when she went right after high school. She went for a little bit, then had to like start raising the kids and went back. And
Yeah.
I saw her get her bachelor's degree, graduate her bachelor's degree as I was a kid growing up, and then go to pursue her master's. But again, just things like that. So when I went off to college, I think I had gone through finished my fall semester. And then came back home, tired a little more. Didn't really have a taste for certain things. Didn't really think much of it. Happened to have a doctor's appointment because it was for Christmas break. Went to my doctor's appointment. Found out I was pregnant. And then I told my doctor, like, yeah, I'm in my first like semester, about to go back for a spring semester. Like, I'd like to get a referral for an abortion. Because these are also conversations I had with my family, like my cousins and I. We talked about things like this where it wasn't shameful. We could talk
Right,
about sex. We
exactly.
could talk, then they were closer to my age. We could
And
talk
you're like,
about,
oh, doctor,
yeah. And
I need a
so,
medical procedure.
well, and I didn't
Please
even
help
ask
me
her
out
to
with that.
give me the procedure. I was
Right.
like,
It's
I'd
like
like a
I would like a
referral.
referral. Right. Exactly.
And at the time, the hospital I went to was, the doctor I went to, the doctor's office was in the hospital that was of a Catholic affiliation. And I don't know if that was
Oh,
the reason or not, or just her personal reason.
yeah.
Honestly, I
It could
really
have been
don't know.
both. Yeah, honestly, it
But
could have been both.
she just was like, and I didn't expect it. I mean, she was a black woman with dreadlocks who used to wear like football jerseys in the office. You know what I mean? Real cool down to earth lady.
Yeah.
So it's not like I really expected anything. But she was like, I don't really believe in it. I'll give you like a prescription for like prenatal vitamins. And I was like, that's not really
Every time
what
you
I
tell me
want.
that, it makes me so mad because, like,
It's
what do you
completely and
need a
totally
prescription
against.
for?
You
One,
don't need a prescription for
you don't need a
prenatals.
prescription for prenatal vitamins, but also, like, I just told you that
That's not what I
that is
wanted.
not. I didn't even
I didn't ask about anything so
look and
possible.
have a look of confusion
Well, I
in
didn't
my
ask about what
face.
are my choices. That would have
Exactly.
been different if I would
You
have asked
you knew it.
I knew what my choices were completely.
Exactly. There was
And
one
one thing that I
choice.
always thought, things may not be perfect, but if I were able to, like, either I would bring a child in this world and try to like take
Yeah.
care of them, or I wouldn't. You know what I mean? Because there's some people who could turn out wonderful. You know what I mean? Whose parents give them up and they turn out wonderful. There's other people who have other people raise their kids and it's not wonderful. And for me, I just wasn't willing to take that gamble.
Yeah.
Just because of, and I'm not talking about even adoption. I'm even
Yeah.
talking about like family members. You know
No.
what I mean?
Oh,
Like just
I
stuff like that.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
for me,
Yeah.
I just was like, I can't control everything, but if there's certain things I can't control, those might be one or two of
Right.
the things I try to. Um, and honestly, at that time, I just was like, I'm a freshman in college.
What,
I'm a
19?
no,
Yeah.
no. I went to college at 17, so
Oh,
I
that's
had
right.
just turned
She's
18.
she's so
Right,
smart.
I just turned
Yeah.
18, like right before fall semester ended. So for me, I was just like, this isn't the time. And at that point in time, honestly, I did have a blueprint of how I thought my life would go. So I was like, this is not part of the plan. This is not going to help accomplish the plan. And I can't see a way that I'm at a place where I could do so well for this new plan if I were to try to take this.
Yeah.
So I decided that wasn't something I wanted to do. I decided to have an abortion. I had to do it while at school. I went to school in Georgia. That was something I had to look up and kind of research. And that was the decision I made. Well, sometimes in life, even when you're being careful or not so careful, things happen. So when 6 months later came, right when I'm going back after summer break, I find out that, oh crap.
You're pregnant again.
Yeah. I'm like, like just sometimes you just really don't know. Even the people who are the most
Diligent about,
diligent or
yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, or even people who think like, I've been literally told that this is something that isn't really a possibility for me. Sometimes things happen. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And unfortunately for me, I've also been in a position in life where I've seen what it looks like where people have like tried to do things like remove protection during intercourse. And if you're not paying attention, that very much can be something that happens to you. So, and not to say that if you're not paying attention, like people just aren't paying attention, but I'm saying sometimes people do things that are very deceitful. And if you're not
Right.
like, if you aren't able to, catch it, then you may not even know. But at that time, I was like, yeah, no, like this, like,
Absolutely not.
absolutely not. Like, I actually was on birth control during those times. But I also, at some point, just like really ended up having an extreme like reaction to birth control to the point where it made me
Yeah.
physically sick.
Yeah.
So sometimes you also have things like that where people
Exactly.
just
It's just
don't
not
react. And I've
enough.
tried
Yeah.
low estrogen, other
Yeah.
progesterone. Like I've tried different things
Right.
sometimes that are, or that like are as types of birth control. And sometimes those
Yeah.
things just don't work. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
just could be other things. I mean,
Everyone's
I've had
body
cysts that have
response
ruptured
is
on my ovary that
yeah.
almost killed me.
Oh well.
I've also had cysts that have ruptured that were not as drastic, that did not almost kill me. So they were much more benign. And then I've also had like fibroids. So, you know, there's so many things, especially as women of color, that we deal with, especially when it comes to just like our reproductive organs.
Yeah. Yeah. That,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
So, all right.
it is what it is.
So you're
But yeah,
so
so
your summer after your freshman
yeah, so
year.
I find out that this seems to be the case right before I go back to school.
So you're here in DC.
Yeah, I found
Okay.
out like in DC before I went back, and I'm going back to Georgia. I didn't have time to do it here.
Right.
So I went back to Georgia, and I went to the place I went to before. Felt okay there. I think I had to go for 2 appointments. They make you do the blood test because if you have a negative blood type, then there's an extra thing they need to give you. I think when you're getting like
Okay.
anesthesia or getting the.
So they were very thorough
Oh, they were very
in their
thorough.
in
I
their
mean, they even like.
procedure
I
is
mean,
what yeah.
they were careful. They
That's
were
what I took
thorough.
away
They
from
were
that.
kind. I
Yeah.
mean, they gave me. I remember they gave me saltines and lemonade in my recovery area. It didn't
Oh,
rush
that's
you out.
nice.
Like you were
Oh,
still in
okay.
your bed and everything. Like it was a cool area. I mean, not cool, but in terms of like just the comfort level, it was a place where you could be comfortable. And they did their best to keep people from like protesting and things out front. Every now and then you
Yeah.
might see somebody on the sidewalk in front or maybe with a poster or something, but they really tried their best to do it with security. I mean, some of that stuff is very much so also off putting when you're going in. Especially,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had never went in as a person that was unsure so much at that time. I went in
Right.
knowing what I wanted to do. Going in and being unsure, that can be an extreme amount of pressure.
Right.
When you're already going through something that is causing you a lot of pressure, also something that has your hormones all the way out of whack. So it's just, you know,
Exactly.
and a hormone slash emotions, also, you know, however you
Yeah.
want to look at that. But what I do remember is that I went and everything seemed fine. Everything was routine. I left. I went back and luckily, honestly, now that I think about it, luckily I had gone before and had an idea of like what that was supposed to feel like, had gone through the, you know, follow appointments that they have for you afterward to make sure that everything's okay, you're healing okay. Like I had done all of that. So I had an idea. Within the day after, you have some discomfort, you may have some
Mm-hmm.
pain. Um, but I ended up having more pain than discomfort. And I just remember the pain got so bad that it
Mm.
felt unbearable. And I knew something was wrong because I had never had that amount of pain happen to me before, like in my abdomen area. And I actually called a person that was a friend of mine at the time and asked them to pick me up and take me. They weren't even one of my close friends, just somebody I knew from home, and asked them to come pick me up and take me. And I sat in the waiting room for hours, as anybody who's been to the ER before has
Yeah.
experienced.
So you were just having pain.
Oh,
It didn't
extreme abdominal
extreme
pain. But
pain,
I was
but they
already.
didn't consider you at like an emergency status,
Well,
like
I
at
mean,
a
even though I was in the emergency room telling them it was an emergency, not
no.
emergency enough.
But yeah,
I passed
there's a
out
lot
before
of
they called me back. I was in and out of like trying to just stay
that might have been it.
awake.
Yeah.
I had passed
But
out
you
before they
yeah.
called me back. And when they finally did admit me back, I wasn't even in a bed at the time at first. I was in a
Yeah.
chair. So I was back there and then I finally got in bed. But I mean, literally the pain, like if I can explain to you the pain that I was in, the pain that I was in was so uncomfortable that once they finally got me in, got me to a bed, got fluids in me, and got morphine tapped into the fluids, they gave me a dose of morphine. I did not feel any different. I'm a person that doesn't even usually keep Tylenol. I don't really take a lot of medicine.
Yeah.
If I go to the doctor, even when I had surgery, I asked them not to prescribe me narcotics because I don't care for them. I'm just very just cautious about that. But I remember them giving me like at least a second dose of morphine at minimum, and them being like, hey, so we can't actually give you any more right now medically that would be safe. And I could still feel pain.
Wow.
And I don't like the feeling of morphine going through me because it's
Yeah.
very warm in your veins. And I don't like that feeling.
Yeah.
So I just remember that. And thank goodness I got there. Thank goodness I got back there. But literally that evening, they checked me in and told me that I would be staying there overnight and I would be having an emergency surgery in the morning. So just to deal with whatever was going on, I honestly don't even remember if they told me everything that was going on at that point or if I really recalled. And I was supposed to meet my doctor the next morning before I went into surgery. He ended up being called into an emergency surgery at that time. So I didn't get a chance to even meet him, but I was getting rolled down in this surgery like first thing in the morning. But that's all I remember before waking up back in the hospital room that I had, in which they kept me for another couple days. But I came to find out that I actually had an infection because a small piece
Right.
of the matter from the abortion was still left behind. And the irony in that is that the reason why my mother almost died after having me via C-section was because when the doctors removed me, there was a
They
very
had left
small
some
piece of
tissue.
placenta
Yeah.
that was not removed. And so when she spiked
It's
104 plus
infectious. Yeah.
fever, like most people, I mean, now they'll kick you out of the hospital in like a day. If you have a C-section, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But
3. Yeah. That's
when
my experience.
my mother had me in the 80s, she
Yeah.
was there for 10 days.
Wow.
Nobody stays for 10 days. And they wouldn't even
No.
let me be in her room because they didn't know what she had initially and they didn't know if it was something that I could
Wow.
catch. Honestly, like when you think about what happens, like I had an infection that came from whatever was left. And had I not gotten treatment and not gotten an emergency DNC in inadequate enough time because I had showed up at the latest I was there early afternoon. I got checked in, I was on antibiotics, fluids, and pain medication, and still rushed into emergency surgery as soon as it could happen the following morning. So I completely understand how those women died. And the worst part about it is I know how I felt
Yeah.
at that time. And I know the type of pain I was in before it got to the worst of the worst. So not only did they have all of these things happening, they died in agony. They died in literal agony while people ignored them. And they died in the most unsufferable pain that you can really think of. I mean, the real unfortunate part is that it's all preventable. They had children. Their children will now grow up without mothers. You know, women aren't breeders. They're not built here
Yeah.
just to breed. And so, in order to like have a life, sometimes there's other things you have to do. And I'm very thankful that at the time that I went through all of these things, and I was a college student in Georgia, that these were options that were even available to me. Because when I think about it, of all the things that have happened within the last few years, if I were a freshman in college today, I would be dead. I wouldn't be able to sit here and have a conversation about a story at all. I wouldn't be able to be in a position where I'm discussing, getting married or family planning. Like these things would have taken all of that from me.
If you can put into words like how you felt after your
Procedures.
abortion, as
I felt thankful to be able to have that as an option. I felt thankful not to be trying to figure out like how I was going to raise a kid and not knowing which way was up and not knowing what I was going to do and living off student loan money. And you know what I mean? Like that's something I felt thankful for. I also felt thankful that I had people in my life that were there to support me. And thankful that I was able to get the care that I needed so I could like be alive, literally just live
right,
and see what the future had. Honestly, I mean, I was very thankful that those things were just available. I mean, of course, when something's happening in your body and you don't know exactly what's happening and it's extremely painful, you are very scared. And
Right.
that type of fear, you don't know what will happen, and there's nothing you can do for yourself. You really just are hoping that you get to a place where you're in the hands of somebody who can actually do something beneficial for you and everything works out. I mean, like finding out that my surgery went successfully
Yeah.
without even getting a chance to meet my doctor first, like having to meet him afterward, like knowing all of that happened, I was super thankful. Like just super thankful. Like once I started getting better, you know what I mean? Like you just feel thankful. Like you look at things differently. A lot of big arguments aren't as big anymore. You know, just it really changes your perspective on things.
Do you have any regrets about your
Absolutely
decisions?
none. I mean, I don't have literally. I have no regrets about the decision I made. I don't have any regrets even about like, even though it was an unfortunate occurrence of like just something that could have happened of like going through a surgical procedure and something being behind to leave an infection. Like that can happen from literally getting like an appendix removed or anything. Like, you know, there's just certain things that can
Yeah.
happen. I don't have any regrets about it. And I think that the only kind of regrets I have in certain ways is just like, and not even really a regret, but just like kind of a something I wish that could have gone a little different
Mm-hmm.
is that it was talked about more. Like I was able to talk to like luckily I was able to talk to like close family members or certain close friends about it, the ones I chose to like share with about these things. But there were certain things that I thought about that I struggle with that I just probably wish that the conversation was more robust around so that a way you can have better conversations about it or maybe had reached out to somebody to talk to about just like the things I was thinking about regarding these things, especially
Mm-hmm.
like when you go through something traumatic. It's like so traumatic. It's like having to go through all these thoughts and decide on what you want to do and going with that and then having something else happen that wasn't even in your forethought of like possibilities that could have such a more dramatic outcome. And when you're sitting there in so much pain and like I don't know if I'm gonna make it, sometimes you're just like, what is happening? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like so I think that not a regret, but like I do wish that more resources were had around like just counseling, like even that being offered, I think would have been really
Yeah.
good just for people to talk about. And so I wouldn't say like a regret, but one thing I wish could have maybe been a little different is that the environment around it was a little different and that, you know, that could have been something that was really offered. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you need other people to talk to kind of help you realize that like although these traumatic things may have happened, like there's just ways to work through it where it doesn't have as much as like a mental toll on you from like going through certain things.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the only thing that I would kind of want to be different. But honestly, like I don't really live a life with many regrets.
Right.
Not to say that I don't live a life where I can't think of something that has happened where like I've learned a lesson
Exactly. And
or
that's what
could have
those
done differently if I
that's
would have
why
had
you
different
go through
knowledge up
those
front.
experiences.
But in terms of
Yeah.
this particular subject,
Yeah.
there wasn't any knowledge like I felt like I didn't have up front.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
And
just I'm thankful that I had the options, that I had the ability to
mm-hmm.
have the conversations to know about what these options were, to have a support system. So in terms of those things, I'm very much so not regretful, but very much so grateful.
Yeah. Thanks for having this conversation.
Anytime, I'm glad I got a chance to share. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's great that we get a chance to have these conversations and
They're
really
so
get
important.
make them more
They're
commonplace
so
because they
important.
shouldn't be as few and as far in between as they are,
Because everybody loves someone who had an abortion
or who needed one. Because again, we've had friends
or had one.
who've had miscarriages, and sometimes you need one in order to just live to be able to go ahead and have
You
another
had
baby.
one. Yes.
Yeah,
Needed it, wanted it, couldn't live without it. All of those things.
had to get it.
We love you.
We love.